I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. We will be gearing today's webinar towards any and all of our new clients that are with us, and we will be going over these basic processes of using CaFÉ beyond what is covered in our initial training. So even if you have been using CaFÉ for a little while, I still hope you learn something or become more confident in using the system after today. We'll start by reviewing how to set up a call, which is what is covered in the training, but we'll do a short review. We'll then talk about how to manage the applications once they come in. And then finally, I'll show you the basic steps of the jury administration process and fill you in on what you need to do to wrap up your call and get it ready for your event. After you request your new call, we will set up a call template for you in CaFÉ. You can find that by going to the Events Management tab, which I have there, and then you choose the event from your drop-down menu. You can either type to search it or you just choose it from there. And then once your call is chosen, you'll go to the Call Editor button. This is where all of the call's information will be entered. So I'll briefly review each of these tabs that we have here at the top. Apologies if I go a little too quickly, since this is more just a review, but I'll be showing you pretty much all the basic things that you need to know. So first, the Event Information tab, where we are here, is where you'll input the details of your call, your contact organization, and set up the application deadline. Some fields, when you first get your template, will already be filled out for you. We'll fill it in as you entered it on the new call request form, but we ask that you review these just to make sure that they're accurate. At the top of the tab here, you have a space to upload your logo, and then you also have a place to upload your floor and site plan image. Below that, we have the call listing URL, and this only appears if the call is active. But it can be used to link to your call description on your website or any other marketing materials. Underneath that is the front end status. So this should be disabled when you first get your call, but you need to make sure it's set to active when you're ready to take your call live and publish it. When you set your front end status to active and save that page, this is when the call URL listing here will be generated. And then below this, we have the basic details of your call. So you want to make sure it's filled out with that information about your organization, etc. Be sure your contact info is up to date in case artists need to reach out to you. Below this, we have the short description. This should be a short summary of your prospectus, and it is what the artist will see on the call listings page. This is important to have to convince artists within a few lines of text to read more info about your call and hopefully apply. The long description, though, which is right here, this will explain in more full detail your call's prospectus. And while you can start by summarizing the call, you'll want to go into more depth about the instructions for the artist to apply. Common details include your call and event timeline, entry fees, if applicable, potential prizes or awards offered, maybe some info about the juror, and any other submission requirements. This is also a good place, I'll mention now, to add any info about COVID-related stipulations to your event. A lot of us are shifting or have already shifted to virtual things like that. So you'll want to make sure that you include information about what you're doing during this time so that artists know what they will be participating in. So below the long description, we then have the legal agreement. This can vary depending on your organization, but common terms and conditions that you can include here can be things like the eligibility, potential artwork sale commission info, artwork liability, and your refund policy. Artists must agree to this before applying to your call. And then below this, on the event information tab, we have some more settings and fields. Some of these you won't have to worry about, but I'll point out the ones, I'll point them out so that you're familiar to them. Here, the do not allow artists to archive setting should always be set to active until you have fully juried and made your selections. This setting ensures that artists are not able to archive their images while you're still using them. This setting will automatically update to disabled when your jury is complete, so you don't really have to pay attention to that, but that's what that's used for. The accept applications date that we have here is the date your call will go live. If your front-end status is set to active and this date is in the future, so if we had it set to Monday, for example, your call will automatically open up on this date here. If the front-end status is disabled and this date is in the past, it won't be live, so you don't have to worry about that. But just know that if your call is live, but it's for some reason not showing on your the call listings page, check to see if this date is in the future or not, because if it is in the future, it's going to wait until this date to publish it. So then you'll want to just make sure it's set to the past. And then next up, we have this application deadline date. The deadline date will be entered by our team when we set up your call, but you'll want to make sure it's correct. I do want to point out, though, that if we are still awaiting payment for the call module fees, this deadline date will be set to the year prior. So if this call was unpaid, this would be set to 2020. This doesn't stop you from editing any of these other details here, but it just will inhibit you from taking your call live until we receive payment. When we receive payment, we go in and we manually change this to the present date so you can take it live. If you are paying by auto-deducting your module fees from your entry fee revenue, you don't have to worry about this. It should already be set to the correct date. So just keep that in mind. Next, we have the confirmation deadline setting. Now, this is rarely used, but it's actually a pretty neat tool. It's used if you require artists to confirm that they accept your invitation to the event if chosen. So this happens after the jury process. You can also use this feature to collect a participation or handling fee after the call process before the event. If you're interested in using this kind of tool, you can contact us and we'll help you set it up. There's a few things that need to be set up in order to do this, but it's available and we can help you do that. Below here, we have the invitational feature. So when active, like we have it here, the call is hidden from the public call listings page and makes it private so that only folks who have this passcode that you enter here can access the call. This feature is kind of rarely used. I think some folks are using it more now. But just so you know, if your call, again, doesn't appear to be live on the site, check to make sure that this isn't active. Even if you don't have a passcode set and it's still active, your call will be private. So just make sure it's set to disabled if you don't want to use it. We also have event start dates, and sometimes you'll also see a jury start and end date. These can be used to let artists know more about your event's timeline, but they're not necessary that you use them. If you don't feel like using them, you can just set it to disabled. And then finally, we have the jury type. This is already entered as you select on your call request form. Again, just please double check to make sure that the correct jury type is selected. If it's wrong, let us know as soon as you get it. And then only CaFÉ staff can update this setting. And as you may be aware, the jury type affects all aspects of the call setup. So it's important you use the right one. Okay, and then I've mentioned this in previous webinars, but we have a preview application description link, which I highly recommend using. You can click on this to be taken to a preview of the call details page as it would appear to the artist. So all this information we already talked about today, this is how it appears. I will now go over the application editor tab. This is where you will build your application. First on here is the artist statement options. If you'll be collecting artist statements from your artists, you'll want to make sure that this is set to active. If not, set it to disabled. There will be basic instructions on the application to prompt the artist to enter their statement. But if you want to add additional instructions, maybe be more specific, you can provide them in this field right here. You can also set a character limit. Just remember that to save the changes to this section, you have to click Modify. The Save button down here at the bottom will not actually save anything that you change here, so make sure you click Modify. Next, we have the application custom questions. If you'll be collecting questions for other information from artists, this is where you build those out. Note that this is not where you will ask for the images. That happens at a different section. This is only for supplemental material that you need artists to enter for their application. We've got specific instructions in our help center about how to add different types of questions, since each of them look a little bit different. We also have a webinar that goes in depth through this process, so you can access all of that through the help tab up here. But just to review, I'll show you that when you first add a question, you will type in an internal title. So this is just going to be like a short reference word that you will use, but it's not actually going to be seen. Then you can choose the type of question that you'd like. I'll click text box here. If it's a checkbox, radio button, or drop-down list, you'll have these options, but for this case, we won't have any additional number of options. You can also select to hide from jurors or not. When you're ready, just click Build New Question. You'll see our internal title here, the type, the character limit if you want to set one, and then here is where you will actually enter your question. So it's really important that you enter your question here as you want the artist to see it. You also have the option to set the priority, which means the order that it will appear on the application. So we can have it be a little bit lower on our page. You can select it to be required and then hide it again. If you enter information into this text box here, that will appear as a little help bubble, which will pop up on the site if the artist clicks it. And then when you're ready, just click Create Question. Then it'll just be added to the form here. All right, so next on this page, we have the categories editor. This can be changed to active only if you need to create categories to organize your entries. If you activate this section but don't add any categories, this will actually create a couple different little problems in the system. And it won't actually allow artists to apply. So if you activate this, just make sure to add those categories in there. And then another thing on this is the media requirements section, which is listed at the bottom here. You'll see these fields aren't actually editable to you. Only CaFÉ staff can update these requirements. We'll enter your work sample requirements as you've entered them on the call form. Again, just review to make sure that it looks exactly like you want it to be. If there's an error or you need to make changes or anything like that, just let us know as soon as possible and we'll help you update them. Finally, just like in the previous section or the event info tab, we have a preview. If you click Preview Application Questions, you'll see how the application will look to the artist. This is helpful just to make sure that you've entered your actual questions, that all of your options look right, and that you're pleased with it. All right, and then finally for our call setup review, we've got the Product Editor tab. So first check to make sure that your entry fee is entered. We'll add it like you submitted it on the form, but you can always change it if you need. And then be sure to just update if you need the description. Just some folks like to use the call name, but it's important that you add something like entry fee or member fee so that they know what the actual fee is for. If you have two entry fees like we have here, like a non-member fee and a member fee, you can just add a second line with the same type as entry fee, and then include in the description that it's for members only. Well, I'll just say that keep in mind that this is an honor system, whether or not the artist chooses between the two entry fees, since they're technically able to choose either. If you want it to make it more secure for members to get a discount, you can actually just create a coupon code, and I can show you how to do that in just a minute. And then, yeah, so just make sure all these details are set up correctly. Another thing to note is the quantity sold should be at 9999 to accept an unlimited number of submissions. Let's say you wanted to cap the submissions though, you could always change this. So you could change it to like 250 to cap the submissions at 250. And then once that is reached, it would just be marked as sold out. Not many folks use that, but if you want to, it's there. If you're charging an additional media fee, which is available to jury by artwork calls only, you'll add that using the empty line below the entry fee. You'll enter the cost and the description, and then be sure to just include media fee under the type. Media fee is the only one that will count the number of images the artist is submitting above that minimum and add up how many additional media fees will be charged. In the description, be sure to indicate that this is a media fee so that there's no confusion for artists that they're being charged twice for the same thing or anything like that, because in fact, it's a separate fee being added. And then be sure to click add or save if you're making any updates to this. You can also choose the payment preference if you accept checks, credit card and PayPal, or all of them. So I'll show you really quickly how to create a coupon code. To do that, you can click on create a coupon code here, or you can go up to events coupons. So to create coupon codes, you can enter codes that will discount the entry fee and or the media fee. You can have multiple fees set up. You'll see the ones that I've listed here, and you can choose which fees the codes that you've created applies to. You can also choose to have the coupon start and expired at certain dates. So that could be useful if you have an early bird discount or something similar to that. Once you fill out these fields here, you'll click add to add or edit to save. And then the artist will enter the code. This is where the actual code is. They'll enter this code into the promo code box that appears when they click on the entry fee that they're paying at the checkout page. Before we move on, I did want to show you a helpful tool that you can do to make sure your call is set up as you'd like and to create an artist account for yourself and a practice applying to your call as an artist would. So the method of setting up an artist account and doing this will help you understand a little more what the workflow of the artist side looks like and help you answer any questions for artists down the road. So to do this step without officially publishing your call, you can set the invitational passcode that I talked about earlier. You would set it up to active, make sure your front end status is active, and make sure your accept applications date is in the past, so you would be able to find your own call, and then just set this passcode to whatever you'd like it to be. Then you can create an artist account or log into the one if you already have one, and you will be taken there. Technically, the first step for an artist is to upload work samples to their portfolio. So you can go to My Portfolio and you can practice uploading any images that you have, filling out these fields, and just getting a feel for what it's like and the kinds of questions that are asked by the system when they upload their photos. So you can start with that. Then you can go to Apply to Calls. This is where you'll see the full call listings page. To apply that invitational passcode, you'll click on invitational calls, enter the passcode, and then click enter. This will bring up the call. And you can see from here, this is that short description that we talked about. So from there, you can click more info, again, review, kind of like that preview. But then to move forward as an artist, just click apply now, review and agree your legal agreement. And then you'll just be taken to the application and you can enter the information and everything here. So that's all there for you. And then I'll just go through these. You know, it's kind of a good way to just make sure that you have a different perspective when you set up your call. So I just entered some placeholder text, and then we can select an image or a couple different ones. Then we can go ahead and save just as an artist would. We can see categories. This is where their categories would be selected. And then you can even, you don't have to actually check out, but you can just go to the checkout page. You can select things, look at the coupon code box. This is where it pops up. Proceed to checkout and just kind of see what that checkout page looks like. So that's just one tip I have to really just get a feel for what the artists are doing on their end while you're hosting your call on your end. So when an artist submits their entries or entry, their applications will appear in the receive status. So to see this, I'll go to the Events Management tab, and you'll see the Applications by Status table, and you'll see that we have our entries in the receive status. This means that they've entered their images, answered the required questions, paid for, if applicable, their entry fees, and successfully submitted. This table here, or this page, I'll just give you a quick tour of what's on here. These are all the statuses that are available for you to use, and later on I'll go over some of the ones that you're more likely to use, but all of these you can move the applications around to these different statuses. Some of them have their own rules with them that I'll go over. On the right here, you have the search box where you can enter the name, the app ID, or any categories, statuses, etc. That's just a quick way to search for an application. And then to view the applications, either click on the name of the status, or you can just click to view all. That will pull up this table of applications. Now, this table will look a little different depending if your call is jury by artwork or jury by artist. If you set your jury type to jury by artwork, the applications submitted by one artist will be separated into individual submissions on the list. The first line of information will include the transaction details, while the additional entries, see we've got the same artist here, these will not include the transaction details. This then gives me a sign that this artist submitted 2 images, therefore 2 entries since it's separated. If your jury type, and I'll just switch to a different call real quick, if it's jury by artist, your table will look like it's one line per artist or per application if you're allowed them to submit more than one. But this will then group all of their images into one, so it'll just be one line. So artists are able to see too that their status is received. In fact, if you change their status on this end before you start your jury, the artist can actually see their status. So you just want to keep that in mind. This table is sortable by the heading. So just click on a heading to sort ascending and click on it again to sort descending. That can be helpful if you need to just sort this. There's other cool things you can do here. So the status drop down is where you can change the status. You can actually change the category if you know that their category is different. Under the notes column, you can add a comment. So if you click on add comment, you can type in up to 250 characters and then click edit to save that. You can also click on status history and you will view all of the different changes made to that application, who made that status change, when they made that change, things like that. So that might be helpful if you need to track a certain application status. And then tagging, which I'll go over in a second, is where you can have your tagged applications. Same goes for flagged, so you can flag and unflag. You can also sort by flagged applications. So Andrea, you asked if I could explain the jury type, so jury by artist versus jury by artwork. There's a lot of different details for each one, but I'll quickly go over. Jury by artwork, which is the most commonly used for exhibitions, means that multiple pieces submitted by an artist will be separated into individual entries. So I will go, let's see, I'll go here. So we have Katie Romano. When she entered with 2 images and it split it up into 2 applications. So I'm going to click on her artist citation and you can see she has 1 image here. And then she submitted a second one and she has a second one here. Now she uploaded these at the same exact time, paid for it at the same exact time, but the system split them out into separate entries. Therefore, when you go to jury the artwork, each of these pieces will receive a separate score. Now, jury by artist means that the artwork that is submitted is grouped together. So if Katie, I think she did apply to this one as well. I can find her so it's familiar. Yep, she applied here. When she uploaded the work, it's all grouped together into one submission, and it will be judged as one submission and given one score. So we don't have a whole lot of time to go over the details. We do have a help guide of just about these differences, since there are nuances to it, but that's the basic setup of those two. So moving on, I've already just showed you this, but to click on to see the artist citation in the application itself, you click on the ID number, and this takes you to the full application. You've got the contact info up top, the answers to the custom questions here, the transaction information, any copies of emails that you sent to them through the system, their statement, and finally their work samples, which you can click and click again to view. This is down here where you'll add the tag, so you can, I'll remove that, but you can just add a tag here and click save. And that will show up on the table. Okay, so I will go back to this and show you a little bit about what other statuses are available to use. One status that is helpful is the incomplete status. This allows an artist to modify their application. So let's say an artist comes to you and they need to make a change to their application, but the deadline is still in the future. They have plenty of time. And let's say you allow this. So you would come in here and set the status by changing the drop-down menu to incomplete, and then you would save it and come here. So this just means now that the artist is free to go into their side and click modify and make the changes. They would then resubmit their application and the status would be changed back to received. So it's important to note that this status must be used before the call's deadline. The other one that is important is the exception status. So let's say the call deadline is passed and the artist needs to make a change to their application. If you want to make this exception for them, you could then change it to exception, click save, and then this would allow the system to allow Katie to go in and make a change to the application. So incomplete is for before the deadline, exception is for after the deadline. And then a couple other here that you might want to know is like the other status. This can actually mean whatever you want it to mean. You can sort them into there if you want to. Reviewed could be helpful if you're reviewing all of the applications in the received status and then you want to put them in reviewed once you know that they have the required materials, they are eligible, and they're ready to go. Just make sure that if you do that, you put them back into received before the jury process starts, but I'll talk about that again later. There are other ones too that are less commonly used, like the exempt from jury or the waitlist statuses, but they're available if you need to use them. Keep in mind though, like I said, if you change any of the statuses for the applications to any of the other boxes here, it will be seen by the artist until you have started your jury. So just keep that in mind. If you move an artist to other, they might wonder what that means and reach out to you. So that might not happen, but you never know. And then of course, we'll go over things like the invited and not invited when we talk about the jury. This process can vary for each organization and each call type. And there's kind of a lot to go over, but I'll try to just talk about the most important steps for how to set up and how to conduct your jury. Again, our help tab includes several guides and even webinar recordings that walk you through the process, so you can see what that looks like. And then there's also a help guide for jurors that will show them this process too. Okay, so once your deadline is passed, so we can just pretend that our deadline here on this call is in the past, and you're ready to begin, you'll go to the jury tab up top and you'll go to jury administration. Make sure your call is selected. Under step 1, you'll see various settings. This should actually start at not yet started. You'll see various settings here for setting up the format of your jury. So under step 1, we've got the scorecard sort. You can see that this is not actually editable to you. That's because it kind of has another ramifications for other things, but you can sort by application ID, you can sort by artist last name, or you can actually sort randomly. So if you need to change that, let us know. The random sort is what kind of causes hiccups and needs to be done in a certain way, which is why we ask that you contact us. But that's there. Application ID technically means it's sorting it in the order that the applications came in. Next up, we have the jury status, which I've talked about earlier. It will begin at not yet started when you first start your call, but when you're ready to begin, you'll want to change it to in progress and click save. This will then close the curtain for the artist to be able to see the statuses. And this essentially just kind of hides it, and now everything you do on this end can't be seen by the artists. You also have to make sure it's set to in progress to be able to allow access for the jurors to see the artwork and start scoring. And then another thing that needs to be done to make sure that the jurors can see the work is that the applications must be in the received status to be shown up here. So if they're not in received, then the jurors can't see the artwork. Next, we have the scorecard view setting. This determines which view the jurors will have when scoring the work. And I'll show you in our help guide, we've got the 3 different types here, and I'll pull up this so you can see what it looks like. This is our help guide for jurors, and I'll just scroll down to show you a couple screenshots of the different scorecard views. The first scorecard view option we have is the monitor view. This displays the individual scorecards as a slideshow, one at a time against a gray or black background. Projection view, which I will scroll here, is against a white background, and instead of it being a slideshow view where they click to go to the next one, it'll actually just be a list one after another. There's not too much difference between projection and monitor views except the background color and the fact that under monitor view, they actually will have different options. They can preview it. They can view the thumbnail images and the scorecard first with thumbnail scorecard option, or they can view the enlarged images first and then view the scorecard options under the slideshow scorecard. And I'll show you a little tip of how to review these before the jurors select it, so you get to know a little bit more about how to choose the right one. We also have a third scorecard view, which is gallery. This is what the gallery view looks like. The gallery view is available to calls with the jury by artwork type only, since the images are separated. This displays a grid of 20 thumbnail images at a time and allows the jurors to just go through and mark their scores. So this is helpful if you have a lot of different submissions, so many that it seems a little tedious to use a different one. So this allows the jurors they could click on the images to enlarge them, things like that, and they get all the same info, but it's a little bit easier to go through and score quickly. So those are the different scorecard views. I recommend looking through this help guide if you want to learn a little bit more about the differences between them. And we'll go back here. The next setting to set up is the scorecard or scoring type. You can set it to 1 through 7, 1 through 20, or yes, no, maybe. You can choose whichever you think will help you best determine your invited entries. Under jury permissions here, you have the option to hide certain application elements from the juror. Most commonly used is the artist's name, so you'll want to check that box if you are conducting a blind jury. And then be sure to only select parts you want to hide, not the other way around. The next step you want to do when conducting your jury is to assign the jurors to your call. This is the section that you'll do that, and as the administrator, you'll create juror profiles with a username and password for each juror. To create one, you click Add Juror, and you fill in their contact information. You'll create a username and password that you'll give them, and then enter their email and phone. Make sure their status is active, and when you're ready, click Add. Once you've added the juror, then I would recommend you go back to the jury administration page and just make sure that their name appears here. If their name does appear here, that means they're good to go. They're assigned to the call, and you can just send them the thing and send them the credentials. If they are not listed here, there might have been a little error, and all you need to do is go to Events, Jurors. This is where you'll see the full list of jurors that are set up under your organization's account. You can find the juror that you need and click Edit. And then here is where you want to make sure they have access to the call so that they are available to jury. If this is unchecked, they won't be able to see the entries for that. So you just want to make sure you give them access, click Edit to save, and then they should appear on the jury side. And then, like I said, you'll create the profile for each juror, send them their login information with their username and passwords. And once you've done that step, and once you've set up your scorecard settings, that's pretty much all you have to do to set up the jury. The jurors will then be free to score the entries. And I won't go over the process today for how the jurors score theirs, but we have a whole entire webinar that walks them through that, so you can send them that. And you can also send them that juror help guide that I showed you. Here's the tip I have for you. Same thing like the artist. You can set up your own juror account, just like the process I showed you, and then log out of the admin profile that you have and log back into your juror profile. And then once you log in, you should see your call. As long as you set it up correctly, you can, play around with the different scorecard views, and you can just kind of determine what might be the best setup for your jurors. This might help you troubleshoot anything that the jurors run into, but again, if the jurors need help, they can always reach out to us. Okay, so moving on, as soon as your jurors begin scoring, you'll start to see their scores being entered next to their name on the list. Here you can also click to remove their scores. Let's say, something happened, but you can also click to restore their scores. So, everything's reversible. So that's, kind of reassurance for you that if you need to do that, that option's there. You can also see the scores that come in at the bottom of this page on this table of applications. You can see all the different scores by each juror and their comments if they included anything here. The system will then take their averages that they've scored and turn them into the average score. As you can see here, we have our scores as yes, no, maybe, and our average score is a number. That's because a yes equals a 3, a maybe equals a 2, and a no equals a 1. So that's how the scores average out. Stephen, you have a question. Can the juror select the scorecard viewing method, or does the administrator set it? The administrator sets the scorecard viewing method. That is one thing you just have to be in communication about with them if they want to change it, but you set the scorecard view. Under monitor view, which is the default, the jurors actually do have those 3 extra options to personalize their end. It doesn't really change the view, it just changes like the workflow of that view. Once these jurors have scored all of the entries, you're ready to move on to determining which scores will be, or which entries will be invited and which ones will be not invited. So the first step to do that is to go to step 2, change status and advance to next round. During this section is where you will set a cutoff score, and any of these applications below that cutoff score will be set to not invited. And any applications that are at or above that cutoff score will advance to the next round or advance to become invited. So we'll start by selecting change app status. This is where we'll be changing that cutoff score. So the first step you need to do is select your categories if you use them. The system will auto-populate the average score for the whole group of that category, and that is going to be set to your removal threshold. So here, anything below the average is going to become not invited. If you prefer, though, to enter a new removal threshold value, you can, and that will just determine your cutoff score. So for example, if you're scoring 1 through 7 and you want to eliminate any entries that scored lower than 4, you would enter 4 as your removal threshold. If you're using yes, no, maybe, so which means if you're using 3, 2, and 1, let's say you just want to remove all of the no's from this category. Then you would set your removal threshold to 2, because any scores below a 2 would then become not invited. You would then click update just to make sure that these numbers change correctly, and click preview. So you can see here that by setting it to 2, we've removed the no's. Although maybe this one didn't actually update correctly. Oh, I guess 1 received a 1.5, so they would also be removed even if one of the jurors gave them a maybe score. So their average score is below a 2. So here is where you can preview just to make sure that these are adding up correctly. If you want to add anyone to the wait list, you can change their status here. And then to save all of these entries to become not invited, you click not invited and confirm. And don't worry, if you do this step and you realized you made a mistake, you can always just go back and change the not invited entries back to received. Their scores would be saved and you don't have to worry. You can just start over. If you will be conducting a second round with those remaining applications, looks like we've got 16 remaining, you can then change your jury round to 2 and click save. This would then refresh the scorecards for the jurors, and you can provide whole new scores for them. But let's just say we want to invite these 16 artists and you're ready to go. The next step for that would be changing what is left here, the 16, to invited. To do that, we will go to the finalize the jury section and click on final selection. Again, we'll select the categories. And this time we're going to leave the invite threshold or the cutoff score to 0. This is because everyone at or above 0 will move on, and we want to make sure everyone moves on to the invited status. So we're going to leave that. Then we'll click preview, and we can see that all of our maybes and our yeses will become the ones that are invited. And again, if you need, you can change them to not invited, waitlist, or received. If you know of a certain application that just gives you an opportunity, then click invited. Looks like we have 3 that remained in the receive status. This is because they did not receive any score. So if we needed to, we can manually put these into the not invited status, or whatever. Hopefully your jurors won't leave any applications blank, but now we've got them all. So this means when we have 0 here, that all of your applications are now sorted between invited and not invited. And we can check that by going to events management. We can then click and see that we have 13 invited and 8 not invited. And then we have 0 left and received. So this means that your jury is essentially complete and the entries are ready to be, the artists are ready to be notified. Jenny, it looks like you asked a question. When you make the changes to status on this page, do the artists see that? The artists do not see this. That is because our jury status is set to in progress. So this means there is a blind, or there is a curtain over your jury and the artist can't see the statuses. So the final selection of our webinar today will include everything you need to do to wrap up your call on CaFÉ. This all takes place after the jury process is done. And we'll start by the first thing you need to do once you're ready, which is notify the artists of the jury results. It's best practice to notify everyone, not just the invited artists, because you want to follow through with all those who have put time, effort, and in most cases money into applying to your call. So to notify the artist, we'll start in the Events Communication tab. This is where you will select the batch that you will email and send them an email, one email to the entire batch of artists. So you'll be sending one email to your batch of invited artists, and you'll be sending one email to your batch of not invited artists. We'll start with the not invited today. So I'll click on not invited and click select. Here you'll see the email form appear. This is where you'll enter your information. You'll want to include a reply to email address since the system can't receive replies, but you can, so you'll enter your email. You can CC or CC anyone. You can send a copy to yourself, things like that. I'm not going to enter this information today, but you'll be able to play around with this as you need. You'll enter your body here, which is the message that you want to send. Keep in mind that since you're sending to an entire batch of artists, you want to keep this message generic and keep your greetings generic. And I'll show you in a moment how the system will enter the artist names. So you can also attach any files if you need. Maybe there's some paperwork that you want to include. But essentially for the not invited artists, you'll want to let them know that their piece, at least one of their pieces were not invited, which I'll talk about the at least one of them in a minute as well. So once you've entered your info, and I think I just need to fill in some of these forms. Once you've entered, you can click preview and it'll show you the preview, which you can either go back and make changes and then review. Here you'll see that this is where the system will auto-populate the artist's username, the title of the pieces, and then it'll actually include the status of these pieces. So in this case, it would be not invited. If your call was set up as jury by artwork, where each piece was separated, and if an artist had one piece invited and one piece not invited, the artist would receive this email with their image name and their image status is not invited, but they would also end up getting your invited email message, and it would list which pieces were invited. So if this all looks good to you, you can go ahead and send it, or you can save a draft and come back to it later. And also go back. Another thing I'll point out is that if an artist is receiving an email and both of their pieces were not invited, they'll just receive one because the system will dedupe it. So you can see here we have 8 in our not invited status, but 6 emails that will be sent. And that's because there are 2 artists in here who have more than 1 pieces. So to view the sent emails, it's really simple. You just go to that batch that you've emailed in the Events Management tab. You can click on any of their application IDs and their email would then appear to in this communication section where you can then click to view the copy of the email that you sent them. Then you'll repeat this entire process in the Events Communication tab by clicking Invited this time and sending your congratulations, you've been invited email. So that's how to notify artists. And then once you're done with that, since you've already told them their results, that's when you can go to the Jury tab. And then you want to make sure you set your jury status to complete. Setting your jury status to complete makes the statuses visible to the artists so they can see it on their My CaFÉ entries page. So because their status becomes visible at this step, it's best practice to email the artist first and then change the status. Additionally, you don't want to forget this step of changing it to complete because it gives the artist the chance to confirm which pieces were invited and then also be able to archive their entries on their end. So with those 2 steps, you can stop there and be done and start administering your call outside of CaFÉ or start your event. But there are a couple things that I can point out real quickly that might be helpful for you. There's 2 things. One is the image request. The image request allows you to request the high resolution version of the images that were uploaded by the artist. We can send you a zip file of these download images. So in order to retrieve that, just go to the ticket tab and send us this ticket. And then you can just select your type as image request. Just let us know the name of the status you want, whether it's invited, not invited, or just all of them. We can send them all of them to you if you'd like. But these high resolution images are helpful if you are putting together a virtual exhibition or if you want to use them for any promotions. We recommend getting those high resolution ones from us, so you can do that. And then you also might want to pull any information reports We have these under events management. If you click on view all or the status you need, you can see the options to download a spreadsheet or download PDFs. You can download contact information, application answers, or the information about the artwork and the media. You can also download PDFs of the full applications themselves. That's what applications is. Or you can download a PDF of the media inventory, which essentially is a list of all of the artwork and their dimensions, things like that, and includes a thumbnail preview image on the PDF itself. And that is usually helpful if you are needing to hang your show or accept your deliveries and are checking off which pieces come to your gallery or anything. And then lastly, we do have a report that will help your accounting needs. So if you go to the reports tab, you can go to income breakdown. You can set your date range for the time that your call was run, select your call, and then this will actually just run a report of all the different transactions for your call and will help you total up the amount that you've collected. This will also show you more detailed information about when an artist submitted their information. So it's handy to pull that. You can download it there and just save that for your records. So with that, you are officially ready to take your event off of CaFÉ and into its virtual or physical space. I know we covered a lot of ground today, so I thank you for bearing with me, but I hope you found this helpful to go through those basic processes for conducting a call for entry. So thanks again for joining us, everybody, and be sure to join our next webinar next month. Thanks.